Hello, this is the poorly named, unnamed podcast. I am one of your hosts, Fowler, and R. Dot is here as well.
I thought we were
Um,
naming it Week Old Beans.
I mean, it sort of died on the vine a little bit, I feel like.
No, I think we're like, what, eight episodes in? We can change the name. Nobody will notice. Welcome to Week Old Beans with your host R. Dot, and this is Fowler. Fowler, do you want to introduce yourself? Continue with what you were saying?
Yes, so I was going to say is that we have to basically retract some of the, or maybe not retract, but we have to revise what we said earlier because we initially said that there was going to be a civil war of sorts in Russia, that the Wagner Group mercenary company was going to, was basically marching on the capital. But
Yeah.
a lot has happened, and now that's not the most accurate information. The rebellion um, is over, and the leader of the Wagner Group has basically, like, they've shut off all his news sites, they ended his troll factory, and they've exiled him and removed him from the group. So
Yeah,
it
the
was
whole
a
thing was like a JK moment. Like, truly an epic meme. Uh,
yeah, it's astounding Putin allowed the situation to get to that point. Um, but it is basically over, and we just wanted to say, like, it looks like Putin will remain in power indefinitely from now. You
yeah,
know,
it's one of the issues with jumping the gun. I mean, it was kind of funny, like, we posted that episode, and then, like, the next day was like, just kidding. Um,
yeah, it looks like the
he's
warlord, I forget his name. It starts with a P, but
Priz
he might not be long.
Prizgonin.
He might Prisonin or something. He might not be long for this world. I read a newspaper article and which apparently like Russian papers have been asked by the state, like, hypothetically, if he were to die, do you have an obituary planned out for him? So I don't know. He's been exiled, but like there is a non-zero chance that he he
Prigozhin
may
is his
be
name. Prigozhin.
Prigozhin.
Yes.
There's a non-0% chance that he may be, unalived. That's what it looks like right now.
He might be killed in Minecraft. So just look out for that going forward. So that's just a quick update on that. Not much has come of it, unfortunately. It looks like Putin is still going to be the leader of the Russian Federation. Although I will say this entire thing made Putin look really weak. He took quite a long time to respond. Um, and, the whole thing is just, for him, kind of embarrassing. I mean, it should have never happened to begin with. That's the argument that I would make if I were somebody who was critiquing Vladimir Putin, that, you should have reined in your boys a bit better and uh, seen this coming from a mile away. But
Apparently, what I was reading is uh, Brizgozin, or whatever his name is. He's kind of always been a bit of a maniac. Like, he's one of the wilder warlords or oligarchs in Russia, where he has like a long history of doing pretty insane shit and being involved in the dirtiest, ugliest parts of the Russian Empire. So, you know, he he Putin should always be careful of his oligarchs, but apparently uh Brzozin is like a fucking, super villain. So it was even
yeah,
more obvious that he needed to be
they uh,
watched carefully.
they sent him to Africa. The Wagner Group operates in Africa, terrorizing African civilians. They really, really want to be like European. They want to be a European colonial power, but like they can't because it's 2023, and like African countries are countries with like militaries and shit. So that
Active
they
way of imperializing Africa is what China's doing with the soft power economics. The
Russia
Russians
can't do
are,
that shit. They
you
just
know, they're very medieval. They're very old school in the
yeah
way they do things, and it makes them less effective, I think, in a lot of ways.
yeah. So I guess Prigozhin is going to play Rhodesian bush warrior in some like African country. Hopefully he gets like stoned to death by like a native tribe there. That would be very funny. I would find that amusing. Just kidding. I hope he gets stoned to death in Minecraft. Not in real life, in Minecraft.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems with being a Putin-like figure and having your empire just be filled with the worst kinds of maniacs, and Trump had this problem too, is like crazy maniacal fucks will do crazy maniacal things.
Yeah.
And if you allow a warlord to control a private mercenary army that he can use internationally with no reservations, if you allow him to control all these massive media outlets, and then you also simultaneously make him like the leader of the troll factory, and then you place him in charge of a war, as it turns out, he may go a little mad with power and do a lot of
Yeah.
like gamer shit.
Homeboy went mad with power when he was operating that hot dog stand. That's what drove him to act like this. He was fucking selling hot dogs on the side of the road, and like the Green Goblin was like in his ear, telling him, like, you need to go crazy. Uh, so yeah, that's the update on that. I guess we'll just be keeping an eye on the Ukraine situation. We're what, almost 2 years in? Year in? Yeah, I guess a
But
year
the
in.
but the bigger news and the thing we're mainly going to talk about is all the Supreme Court decisions. And I think actually maybe Ardot, if you want to summarize it before I go into my spiel.
Summarize which there's like 4 cases that happened, so it depends
Yeah,
on
we
which
should
one.
go through all of them and then we'll talk
Yeah,
about our
well,
bigger.
yeah. So we had four. Hang on, three. No, four. We had a couple Supreme Court cases. First Supreme Court case, the overturning of affirmative action. Essentially, the Supreme Court ruled that that affirmative action violates the Constitution, violates the Civil Rights Act. It's very okay. So I'm not going to go into detail about the cases in large part because these are legal cases that have taken up to 10 years. Like we would be sitting here for 5 hours if I were to go through every single detail of the case. But
Two conclusions, that might be the easiest way
yeah,
to do it.
we have to draw the conclusions first. Or draw the conclusions. So affirmative action essentially been ruled, not allowed. From a Harvard case that's been, siphoning through the courts for like a decade. The other Supreme Court case, Fowler, I don't know if I told you about this one, but the Supreme Court ruled that the I guess the conclusion from it is that businesses can refuse service to LGBTQ people based on their religious opinions. And apparently, this case was actually made up from what I read. The actual, like, the scenario that.
Theoretical. It was
Yeah,
a theoretical. Yeah.
theoretical, which is to me even more crazy. A Christian business who didn't want to make a wedding website for a same-sex couple. The Supreme Court ruled that they could refuse service to that couple based on their religious beliefs. The other Supreme Court case, and arguably the most important one of the four, the Supreme Court ruling against the independent legislator theory, or independent legislator. And I guess this one's very. So we'll get to that one after at the end, because that one I have to go over a lot of details. And then the fourth one that I think was ruled today, the Supreme Court determining that Biden's student loan cancellation is unconstitutional. So we have four pretty important Supreme Court cases. We're kind of 1 in 4 or 1 in 3, I'm going to say, because the independent legislator is, of the four, the most important. The fact that they ruled against that essentially means that our democracy is going to be maintained for the time being. So I'll let you pick which one you want to start with, Fowler, and then we can, I guess, just kind of siphon through these.
I think I'm going to go a little bit more broad stroke. So I think that this is a really interesting peek into the fact that representative democracies, in particular, are particularly ours, are often not very democratic. Like so many decisions within our lifetimes, gay marriage, all these four, were not created by the legislature as they should have been, but the choice of like nine life appointed, non democratically appointed judges. And there's a lot of things in our country that are like that. The Electoral College is like that. The Senate as an institution is kind of like that, where there are these guardrails put in place to basically prevent the people from making irrational decisions or, um, moving in directions that are against the wishes of the country. And the Supreme Court is just the most egregious and obvious example of that.
Yeah, most most definitely. And had that independent legislator case gone through, we would have gotten a whole lot less democratic. Let me read, for those who are listening and who don't know, let me read to you what the um, independent legislator theory is. So essentially, the independent legislator theory was put forth by the Republican dominated North Carolina state legislator. And essentially, what it would do was it would allow um, the state legislative power to essentially determine election results. Um, it would have given state legislators pretty much unchecked power to just decide the results of an election. And, in a country that is split along red and blue, it would have essentially solidified the political power of whatever red or blue state that you live in. So, for example, California, I mean, had this passed, California would have essentially just become a Democratic stronghold. If you live in Mississippi or Alabama or, South Carolina, it would have ensured that those states would have become Republican strongholds. It would have essentially ended the shifting of political power. Of course, that's all hypothetical, but I just, considering the world that we live in, I mean, like, I wouldn't put it past politicians, especially Republican politicians who have proven time and time again that they don't believe in democracy, to uh, abuse that legislator theory for their own benefit.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the dangers of a less democratic government, but also the dangers of a more democratic government are really apparent in our age. Trump is an example of what a lot of the more conservative founders feared, that the people, in a momentous lapse of judgment, could elect a fascist or some sort of extremely dangerous, undemocratic figure to take power. And the Supreme Court is sort of the opposite problem of being so afraid of the people and so conservative that you essentially create oligarchies or other systems that do not allow for the country to really operate properly.
Yeah, I mean, Fowler's kind of slamming the nail on the head here. I have a little bit more to say about the affirmative action case.
Mm.
But the independent state legislator theory, of these cases, I think the fact that they ruled against it is good. We've avoided the worst of the worst. Not getting student loans forgiven, unfortunately, although Biden has said he's going to continue to fight for it. I think we all kind of saw that coming. You know, the student loan stuff to me is just, bizarre. Like, I don't, but, I think we all saw that case coming. The two that I think, are going to have pretty important social ramifications, is going to be, the LGBTQ Supreme Court case as well as affirmative action. So do you want to dissect those first, Fowler, and then I'll throw my commentary in?
Yeah, I think the thing that I think a lot of people are pointing out that just needs to be said is that the rulings are sort of um, they're contradictory because the court has decided to rule in one instance that you can your freedom does allow you to basically discriminate against people, but also they're arguing in another instance that like there cannot be that discrimination when it comes to colleges and acceptances. So it's very weird that they're contradicting themselves so close together. You know what I mean? And I can't think of another example of this in like modern history where that was the case. Like the Supreme Court has done, stuff that's sort of anti-democracy or anti-liberal, but they usually don't do it in an incredibly hypocritical way immediately after
Well,
doing something else. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because the Supreme Court's integrity relies on them being, I'm not saying that this is actually how it is in reality, but it relies heavily, their legitimacy relies heavily on being perceived, at least, as these um,
apolitical.
so apolitical sort of arbiters of the law. And I think as they do more overtly partisan things, they weaken the integrity of the Supreme Court. And that could have a lot of very dangerous consequences. Already, the legislative and executive, because of the era of Trump and the Tea Party, has been poisoned. So many Americans don't view those branches of our government as being nonpartisan and being objective and actually working for the interest of the people. And these rulings are going to risk the judiciary also being viewed as sort of a partisan organization that can't be trusted. And I don't know if democracy can survive if the majority of Americans view all three branches of the government as being anti-American, anti-democratic, and unable to be viewed or trusted objectively. I think that might be the end.
Yeah, this is kind of a side note, but on that topic of the American people not trusting the military, I read a couple articles this week about how the U.S. military is actually having a lot of problems recruiting people. There's actually a recruiting crisis going on. The Navy in all four branches of the government, they've not been able to meet any of their quotas. They're having a historical lack of enlistment. To the point that they're actually considering loosening a lot of the standards, specifically a lot of the mental health standards. They're starting to talk about potentially allowing shortening the time in which you had to have essentially like a clean period. So if somebody has depression, in order to get into the military, you have to stop showing symptoms and be kind of non-depressed for a specific period of time before you're eligible to join the military. You have to prove that you are off your medication, that you have been essentially, you know, clean, quote unquote, for a specific period of time, and they're thinking of shortening that time. Just because so many Americans, young Americans, are on antidepressants and suffering from mental health problems, not to mention the obesity issues. But the primary reason, from this article that I read, the primary reason they're having such a crisis is because of people's lack of trust in the military. And they're starting to have to consider just essentially like filling their ranks with newly naturalized immigrants, young people from South America and Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, DACA recipients, first generation immigrants who have no connection to the United States, who don't really know, you know, what happened with the Iraq War. You know, just because there's such a lack of trust in the institution. Um, and also, you know, one of the other reasons is because there's become apparently the highest degree of the highest the demographic that has the most people that join the military are children of military service members. So, you have a father or a mother who joins the military, the likelihood of their child joining the military is very high, and that's also decreased over the past couple of years. I think it went from
Yeah.
25% to 15%. Only 15% of military families encourage their children to join the military now, as opposed to like 25% back back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen whether a democracy can survive that amount of distrust, because democracy, like all forms of government, rely on legitimacy, and the legitimacy in a democracy is the people. And I think we're going to be tested. Because I think something that really struck me that I was reading about is they were talking about, someone made a point where they were basically like, everyone was surprised when Watergate happened with Nixon because, Nixon's a president. The idea that he would break the law was anathema, and even Democrats were shocked. Would anyone be surprised now if a politician did what Nixon did or worse? We've sort of gone to a point where it's
It's expected, and the degree of crimes have gotten worse and worse. I think
yeah.
like Nixon wiretapping, or his is pales in comparison to the shit that Trump is currently being investigated for. Nixon never sold secrets to the fucking Russians. Like
Mm.
we're not saying that Trump did that, but I mean I still think I don't know why he would want to keep those documents if not for that. You know, Nixon never showed Russian, strangers and people documents. I mean, it's just the degree, the egregiousness has gotten, um, or the crimes have become so much more egregious than they were even back in Nixon's era.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things because I have friends that are in the political sphere, and I think this is one of the things that a lot of Democratic standard bearers are sort of deluded about. Is like a lot of Democrats look at like Biden and they're like, oh, like he's passed a couple types of legislation, like he's more progressive than other presidents, like talking about the era that he lives in. But the reality is, while progress is being made, it's not enough of it is being made, and it's not being messaged and symbolized in a way that a lot of people are really working on it. Like a lot of people are very angry and very afraid, and the Democrats' efforts have not pushed us out of this danger zone. And I think a lot of people will be very surprised at how much anger there is and how little people think generally things have
Yeah,
changed.
I saw a tweet the other day, and I know that you and I have had our talks about Robert F. Kennedy, about RFK, and um, this wasn't about his policy or about his beliefs, but they were talking about how one of the areas, listening to RFK speak, watching the way he interacts with people, watching the way he frames his rhetoric. Somebody pointed out, they said like, wow, watching RFK really shows just how the mainstream Democratic Party, the Biden Democrats, how bad they are at communicating with their constituency, how bad they are at communicating to the people, in a
Mm,
way that feels like, um, in a way that feels like they're giving people hope. They're giving people something to look forward to. And I agree with the person. Again, putting aside whatever you believe about RFK and his policies, we're not going to get into that. But even with RFK and Marianne Williamson, also, you listen to them talk and you see like, oh yeah, this is somebody that knows how to communicate with the people, you know. And it just feels like the Democratic Party, you know, on one side, they have no idea. They have no idea how to communicate, effectively. What they believe, what they want, what they see, what they believe uh, their legislation should accomplish, and what it symbolizes.
yeah, I totally agree. It's the reality is that the Democratic Party, like, used to be the party of the workers. Like FDR famously, like he was the union choice. If you were a union person in the 1930s or 40s, you voted for the Democrat. That was um, gospel essentially. But with the New Deal Democrats and the rise of Clinton, like the Democrats have not been they have not been the party of the working class in a really long time, and it shows in the way that they play politics, and it shows in the way their limitations in the way that they do politics. And I think that was a lot of the potential of like Bernie Sanders was, he was not necessarily the most charismatic human being in the world, but he was able to call to that demographic of people that used to be the backbone of liberal politics in America.
And you feel good voting for that person. I think that's the other thing too. Like I think that's what happened with Biden in 2020 is nobody felt good voting for Joe Biden. I mean, like you didn't go in voting for Joe Biden. Like not a single person I talked to on the Democratic side said like, "Man, I'm really stoked for a Biden presidency." It was like we have to get Trump out of here. That was it. That was the goal. And that works for one election cycle. I don't know how you can keep that momentum going for 4 years. If people
You
don't
definitely
want to
can't.
vote, yeah, if people don't want to vote, if they don't feel good about voting, they're not going to do it. They're going to do it once, you know?
The other problem is if you've ever done research, like political science research about fascism, one of the things that like the experts agree is democracy is secondary. People care about the economy, people care about jobs, people care about healthcare, and they will throw all of those things away and have historically in order to get safety and security. And while Trump egregiously was so undemocratic that people were desperate to basically replace him with anyone, if things keep going the way they are, if inequality continues to rise, if there's more and more corruption, if there's the housing bubble, well, we're going to have eventually that will not work as a strategy. And we will run into a situation where um, they will pick a more competent Trump who gives them or promises to give them the security that the Democrats have been unable to give them thus far.
Yeah. Um, it's yeah, no, exactly. It's scary shit. I mean, I try not to get doomer pilled, and I don't want this podcast to be a doomer pilled podcast, but you know, it is scary to think about. Um, especially when you look across Europe at the prevalence now of far right political parties winning chancellorships and becoming presidents and fucking uh prime ministers. I mean, it's happening, all across all across Europe, and I think it's for the same reasons. I think it's for the same reasons that it's happening over here.
Yeah, it's one of the bigger shifts or fissures in the Democratic Party, and I think it's one that isn't talked about as much. That like Democrats who are relatively economically well off, who are older, their response to the era of Trump is, okay, we need to go back to being normal and reasonable. We need to move away because clearly, if the country is voting for people like Trump, like we need to back off and slow down so that voters will continue voting for us so we can stop fascism. But then, a lot of young people and more radical people argue it's only by being more radical, by tapping into the same, hope that Trump was able to tap into, that we can fix America. And that fissure will not close. People who think going back to moderation and normalcy, they believe just as fiercely as the radicals that their way is the only way to prevent the end of democracy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's eventually going to be a battle that the Democrats are going to have among themselves.
yeah. It's yeah, it's kind of like I see it as like masking, the going back to normalcy and encouraging, like normalcy. Normalcy is an illusion. I mean, like returning to sanity, quote unquote, doesn't stop rapidly skyrocketing housing prices. It doesn't fix the fact that wages have not increased since the 1980s. It doesn't fix that it doesn't fix climate change. It doesn't fix the fact that human beings are currently causing the third greatest extinction of our planet. That we're currently undergoing essentially mass extinction of species. Uh, it doesn't like normalcy doesn't stop that. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't improve it in any way. It's just an illusion. It's what you tell yourself before you go to bed at night. Um,
But if you have it good, if you're in a good position economically,
yeah,
like why would you not believe that everything like normal is fine for you? Why not go back?
yeah, exactly. Um, and most people only see what their reality is. So I think it's hard to make them see. Or I think people see it, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do about it. If you're someone who's well off, but maybe not too politically educated or politically savvy, you might know that the world is fucked, but you are not educated enough to understand how to fix it. So you're just going to pull the blind over your eyes,
Very true.
Um, I know I've talked to people where that's very much their reality. They know it's fucked up, and at the end of the day, they're not you know they're not educated or intelligent enough. They know it's wrong. They know what's going on is bad. They just sort of
Yeah.
I know that sounds fucked up, but uh, and I think you can be in. I think a lot of people are in that position as well. Um, I had something I was going to say about the two court cases, but I think I completely forgot what they were.
Mm.
I guess we've not really gone into the specifics about the cases. Kind of went on a tangent a little bit, but very briefly, with the affirmative action, how are you feeling about the affirmative action uh case? I will say, just to preface for me, um I am affirmative action is a very difficult topic of debate in terms of whether or not it should be implemented. And I think it's a topic that nobody is ever going to agree on. And a topic that for the most part is always going to be considered taboo. Um, there's arguments for whether or not there is a necessity for affirmative action. There's, there's the argument for whether or not affirmative action is constitutional, whether or not it violates the Civil Rights Act, because you are, I think with Harvard and with other colleges, I mean they skew the test, the testing requirements, where if you're Asian, you have to score like 114 points more, and if you're white, you have to score a certain amount more, and if you're black, you have lower test averages that they look at. Um, so, and I've heard arguments to say that the very act of affirmative action is in and of itself a bigotry of low expectations. Um, Kind of like what they did with race norming in the NFL. For those of y'all who don't remember that controversy, where basically the NFL just in order as a way of circumnavigating not paying uh, their black NFL players compensation for the head injuries they received, they shifted the test scores. They shifted the requirements for the test scores for the that they had to give these players, where they basically said, okay, well, black people have lower cognitive ability than whites, so we're going to make the standards lower, which means that um, we won't have to pay them um, as much.
Hmm. Yeah, it is definitely complicated. I think the problem I run into, because it definitely is a flawed system in a lot of ways, but the problem I run into is what's the alternative to pulling groups out of poverty that are in poverty? Because they do not have the means or the money or often like the schools to like actually become a part of the professional class. So like if you don't do that, is education going to be disseminated to parts of the populace where it won't come naturally? I think that's the problem. Is like it's a very flawed system, but I have not heard a compelling argument from anyone about like what the alternative is, Because education is like one of the most important ways to alleviate poverty. And if you remove the ability for people to get an education who can't get an education, well, then they're going to stay poor and they're going to stay in their bracket and they're not going to be able to have the opportunities other people have.
Yeah, it's hard because like I there was a really interesting article that I read about it was analyzing affirmative action in California in the 1990s. and it basically found that um, they basically said like the data on this is really skewed because we first of all we don't know which students could be considered quote unquote affirmative action hires because they don't disclose that. Colleges are not going to say, which students they that were which students were approved to their school on the basis of affirmative action. And then on top of that, um, you can adjust for test scores and adjust for school performance, but if you have the unfortunate reality is that people who are coming from poverty and studying in colleges are going to have a lot more lifestyle problems and a lot more home problems. So they found in this study that a lot of the students who were there, um, due to affirmative action, they performed less or they performed worse in school in large part because they had family obligations they had to deal with. They had parents who were ill. They had you know they had jobs they had to work to help support their families, as well as doing their schoolwork. So their academic performance suffered because they were having to work, a fucking job.
Mm.
At the same time, they didn't have as much time to study as their other peers who were there, who didn't have to work a job because their parents could afford everything they needed. Um,
Affirmative action is definitely a band-aid. It does not fix all the inequalities, and um, no programs will ever fully fix poverty. Like poverty will always be a struggle to get out of, I feel like.
yeah,
But like I think, the New Deal Democrats did a lot of good things for this country, Medicare and Medicaid, for example. But I think in many ways the most powerful thing the New Deal Democrats did was the GI Bill, putting all those people into college who couldn't otherwise afford it. And I think, you know, if affirmative action is gone, then there has to be some equivalent of the GI Bill. There has to be some way to create upward mobility.
yeah.
And
I've heard that Texas that colleges will probably start implementing like the Texas strategy because Texas has outlawed affirmative action years ago. And what Texas colleges did is that they basically and high schools is they basically had the 10% plan, which basically meant that they would.
Dubois 10% plan.
No, it was the Texas 10% plan, where basically in Texas the top 10% of students at certain schools get a automatic acceptance into college. So this allowed for colleges to basically choose specific areas that were a little bit less developed and choose that top 10% student body at those schools and allow them to go to college. It
Hmm.
was completely race neutral, so it doesn't violate any laws. They don't look at your race. It's race blind, but I mean,
How long have they been doing that program?
let me check.
Although we might be going a little late now. We'll see. I wouldn't.
Oh,
I
it's
wouldn't be
a
surprised.
house. It was actually passed by George W. Bush in 1997, so it's actually been around for a long time.
We'll have to. Maybe we can follow up on that, and we can do kind of a deep dive on how the stats in Texas are.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about the LGBTQ bill? Um, or do you want
How
to?
much time do we? How much time do we have
We got
left?
a little bit of time. 45. We don't go over 45. We got like 10 minutes left, so we're good. I don't know if you have any commentary on it, though. I mean, I don't have a ton of commentary. Um,
Well, I have an argument against it. Like we resolved this in a sense, I think in the 60s, where basically it was a debate of whether or not you could refuse. You had a constitutional right as a store owner to refuse service to African Americans. And I believe the argument of why that's not, the case is you can't persecute people for intrinsic elements of who they are as a people. But I think also another really good argument for it is like if you do have some sort of minority group in the country and enough people refuse to give them service, you can create a situation where they're basically an underclass and they're not allowed to basically be a part of the economy and be be a part of society in a way that you have to in a democracy. And I think I think it's pretty crazy that we resolved it for racial politics like 50 years ago or 70 years ago. But now we're having the same argument about, queer people when it's the exact same situation,
Yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah. I would argue the queer thing, the queer issue is, I think it's the matter of that people don't believe that queerness is an intrinsic part of somebody's personhood. Um, Whereas, like, the color of your skin is not something anybody can change. Um, I think there's a, and I'm not arguing in favor of this bill, by the way. I'm just offering a counterpoint. Because I don't necessarily think the two issues are equivocable. Um,
Equivalent.
Equivalent. Sorry, sorry. I'm tired. It's like fucking 10 o'clock. I'm tired of shit, y'all. Y'all can tell when y'all just listen to go back and listen to the podcast, and then I want y'all to tell me if y'all can tell when I do the podcast, because when I do the podcast during the day, you can definitely tell a difference.
They can tell because you bitch about it. Hard not.
Fuck you. All right, fuck you. All right, don't kill my
Listen,
vibe, bro.
I know it's hard. I'm always on
I
100%
know
all the
you're, yeah,
time, and
because you snorted like,
you're doing those 40-degree days.
yeah, I'm doing the fucking like full-time job, and you're just at home, useless, not contributing whatsoever.
You mean furthering my education, helping
I'm gonna I'm
nonverbal
gonna I'm
autistic
gonna
children?
I'm gonna further my foot all the way up your ass if you don't shut the fuck up, okay? Let me continue speaking about what I was talking about. Anyway, um, yeah, but I think it boils down to people don't believe that queerness is like an intrinsic part of your being. They think that it's like a meme, I guess. I don't know. Um, and they also believe that the act of being queer violates uh, their religious beliefs. Whereas, like, I don't know if being, I mean, I'm sure there
Although if
were,
you go back to the 60s, people use references about not mixing the tribes in the Bible as an argument for how like their religion justifies
true,
segregation.
true, true, true. I was about to
Most
mention,
most of these arguments are recycled over and over again.
yeah,
I forget the name of the book, but there's a really good book by a researcher named Hirsch where he talks about how like most reactionary politics are the same two or three arguments every time. They just switch which particular minority group that they're, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. It's interesting. It'll, you know, so I don't know. So I know with like Roe versus Wade being overturned, the minute they overturned that shit, states went to ban abortion. So I don't know. I don't know like what legal changes are going to be made on the basis of, uh,
I've read that a lot of colleges are fighting back. Like one of the loopholes that Harvard is doing is they're they're basically saying like we can't ask you your race, but if you make your college essay about being black, wink wink, nod nod, we will basically factor that into our calculations. So
okay,
I imagine a lot of colleges and universities will do things like that.
or they'll do
But
the
also
10%.
colleges like Harvard are already the colleges in the nicer states, the more liberal states. So they're not the ones who are really going to get screwed. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah,
very much a band-aid in the more progressive areas of society. This is going to really damage a lot of people in red states who are not going to be able to, you know, don't have the will or the capital to overcome like these barriers.
yeah, yeah. I'm interested with I guess the one I'll be curious to see about is the LGBTQ case, and if there's any legislation that gets passed or any actions that get taken because of that. Because the LGBTQ one is more of a business thing. It's not really institutional. Um,
Depends on how many people don't give gay people services. It becomes institutional if enough
yeah,
businesses refuse. I think
um,
that's the worry.
yeah, 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 yeah. Or like corporations like Chick-fil-A or Home Depot. Uh, both of which are run by pretty right wing you know right wing people. There's many corporations that are run by fairly right wing people. They just don't come out and say anything about it. Um. So I guess these are fresh cases. I don't know what's gonna happen. We'll have to keep an eye out. We'll have to keep an eye out and see what goes down.
Yeah, sounds good.
So yeah. Any closing statements, Fowler?
No, I think we covered it. We will, if more rulings happen, or if news stories will come out around the 4 rulings over the past couple days, we will update on that story. So we'll both keep an eye out on it and see if there are any like big news stories about those decisions in the future.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go get
And we
some
will see
sleep.
whether that Russian warlord is dead, because I cannot imagine he lives after opposing Putin. Putin
Yeah.
is famous for murdering everyone who opposes him, and he did try and take the Wagner group and basically take the capital.
Yeah.
So
I'm smoking that Rip Bozo pack.
if the guy who revealed the Russians' dope athletes during the Olympics had to flee to America to avoid being murdered, I can't imagine
Can we?
Prigozhin is
But
going
wait,
to live.
we didn't talk about the most important news story, Fowler.
What is that?
It's the Bolsonaro shirtless pic.
Okay, everyone, it's time to end the podcast. We'll see you
Whoa,
tomorrow.
hang on. Now you gotta see this shit.
It's a podcast. Nobody can see it. It's not gonna work.
I'm gonna describe it in excruciating detail.
Time are we at? Or not?
Wait,
What time are we at though?
I don't give a fuck about the time. It's very important.
Ardot has terrible taste in men. The only thing you need to know about
Okay,
Ardot
whoa,
is Ardot wants to fuck.
Don't be giving away my business like that, bitch. Also, I never said I was attracted to Bolsonaro. Okay, I never said that.
I mean,
such were
he
I
fits
would.
your profile.
No,
He's
he
a
doesn't.
vicious,
No,
wealthy,
he doesn't.
old as fuck, ugly.
No, he doesn't.
Megalomaniac.
No, he doesn't. I think I got AI'd though. I think this was a Twitter meme that I fell for. Hang on.
So now you're spreading misinformation.
Did I just get AI'd? I think I did.
If you sent it to me, I haven't seen it. So
I think I got AI'd. I think Elon Musk did me dirty, y'all. Okay, let's just forget about everything I just said.
We're gonna cut this out of the podcast.
Yeah, we will totally, definitely.
Ardot's reputation.
Yeah. I got AI'd, I think. Why would you give away my business like that about Pal? Fuck you. Asshole. Like, God. Like, you want me to go around telling people that you shoved a pinky up your butt to see what it feels like, huh? No.
Yeah, the difference is that you're lying and I'm telling the truth, and the audience, they're smart enough to know.
I don't think they are. I think our audience is stupid as fuck. To be honest with you. Anyway, thank you guys so much for viewing the podcast. I appreciate y'all. You're not stupid. You're all beautiful, beautiful people. I didn't say that. I'm going to edit that out for sure. Quickest way to get podcast numbers while your audience stupid.
Ardot is in charge of the channel, so I want all our loyal viewers to know that if you send like hate and death threats to the channel, I will be unaffected. It will 100%.
Yeah, he actually will be. It all goes to me. Actually, he doesn't do anything. He just sets up his ugly mic, speaks into it, and then like doesn't speak to me until after I posted the video. And then he never reads comments. And he never checks the views. It's actually. I am doing probably like 95% of the labor here.
Your editing takes you 10 minutes. You slap a thumbnail on it. Let's not pretend that
it doesn't. It takes me more than 10 minutes when you say dumb shit, Fowler. Okay, don't devalue my work like that. Okay. God. See what I got to put up with. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next podcast.